Hi everyone, welcome again to another installment of Mwanangu Mtanami. I am your host as always, Janet. Happy to be here, and for the first time we have a man. Hello, my brother Alois, how are you doing? Hi, we're live. How are you?
Hi, how are you, Janet? How is it?
I am doing so great. Thank you. It's so lovely to have you here. And you know what? I've been dying to engage men on this platform, and this is a great start. We're here. We've got Mr. Alois Nyamazana. He's a father. He's a husband. He's a professional. So many hats, and we're here to tell a story, right? So, welcome to the people who are watching live on Facebook, live on YouTube. Please engage with us in the comments. We are happy to have you. Tapiwa and Duke says hi. They're waving. Hi, Tapiwa. Happy to have you here. So, the reason why we have this man here on this platform is because I'm a woman, I am a wife, and I am a mother, and I have always wondered, as through my maternity and parenting journey, I have seen so many of my husband's friends come through when they're new fathers, when they're soon to be new fathers, and even when they're newly married husbands, and they're always like, how do you do this? How do you do this? It's driving me crazy. So here we want to hear it from the male perspective. What's love got to do with it? So my brother Alois, you're in the hot seat today. The viewers are going to be asking questions. They're going to be firing. So remember, you're inspiring some men out there and answering some women's prayers. So we are so
Precisely.
happy to have you here. And we'll just begin by asking, well, what made you get married? Why are you married to Mrs. Alois?
Thanks so much. Let me just greet the viewers. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, this is a very exciting question. The reason why I got married to my wife is because I loved her and I love her. So, yeah, I think when I met her, I noted that in terms of compatibility, we were quite compatible because we had almost similar interests, our personalities are almost the same, and
Mm-hmm.
even our dreams and aspirations, they are almost the same. So that's why I then decided to get married. And you know what? Interestingly, we met at a church camp, and we were
Uh-huh.
actually praying. And through sharing of prayer requests, that's when I then got to understand more about her, and I said to myself, this is my type. And we started then engaging and running after each other.
You're running after each other. That's interesting. It reminds me of the Stone Age. Okay, so since you then got married, right? How long have you been married, and how many children do you have?
We have been married for 9 years now. We are actually working for our 10th year. We will be 10 next year. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we are almost a decade in marriage, and we
Nice.
have three children, two boys and one girl. And yeah, I don't know what will happen, whether we're going to have another one or not. I don't know.
That's quite interesting. Yes, we are 10 years in marriage and we've got two kids, so we're lagging behind, but I don't think we're going to catch up. So, my next question to you would be, have you always wanted to be a husband? Like,
To be
as you were
honest,
growing up and you were perceiving life, you were looking at your whole roadmap to old age or whatever, have you always thought of being a husband as high on your priority list?
yeah, I would say I always looked forward to be a husband. Yeah, because I grew up liking the white wedding thing.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, because I used to see people on TV, even live, having their weddings, quite exciting weddings. And it's one thing that inspired me. You saw, seeing the men wearing those expensive suits and the wife, in a very good gown and all those things. To me, it childhood, that was my major inspiration. But as I grew older, I think my perspective then changed. The focus was no more on I'm a Christian, by the way. So my
Mhm.
focus was more on getting the biblical perspective of marriage to say I need a helper, I need a
Mhm.
companionship, and all those things forced to make a family. So yeah, I always look forward to get married.
Okay, okay, that's quite interesting. So the funny thing is, I actually was never fond of the white wedding. I know they always say
Uh,
women dream to have white weddings and everything, but I was never a white wedding woman. So it's interesting to hear that this man was driven by that. So now, as you were aspiring to be a husband, what were your thoughts about becoming a husband? Like, what motivated you, and did you have any role models in particular who you looked up to when it came to being a husband?
Well, that's a quite exciting question. I didn't have somebody whom I can call a role model in particular, but I remember I used to like my uncle. Who, yeah, he inspired me because, having grown up in the rural areas, it was difficult to see people who would then succeed in marriage, having very good weddings and all those things. But my uncle
Mm-hmm.
inspired me to do the white wedding, like what I said, but also to be a very good husband. Even my father also did inspire me to be a very good father. So yeah, but I think beyond that, there are quite a number of things that inspired me to be a husband. Whom am I right now?
Mm-hmm.
I think what shaped me, especially in my adult life, is around what I studied at school. I did sociology at school, and when I
Okay.
did sociology, I learned a lot about how society functions. And the one thing that I understood is around the abuse that goes on within the institution of marriage. And
Mm-hmm.
I understood how violence then affects, women, how it affects even the well-being of society. And I became so much determined to be a very good husband. And I
Okay.
said to myself, I will never beat my wife. I will never
Uh-huh.
abuse my wife. And so, yeah, I think my academic studies and my background inspired me to be the husband that I am. I'm not saying I'm the best husband, but in terms of, trying to make sure that I'm not abusive, I think that shaped me as a person.
Okay, that is quite interesting, and I think a lot of I'm sure your wife is happy to hear that. So that then leads me into my next question. You told me about how you being at school inspired you to be a husband, and it gave you certain things that you did not want to become, right?
Mhm.
So now tell us, what kind of a husband did you want to become? And let's talk about the whole love issue. Like, our title is "What's Love Got to Do with It?" You know,
Mm.
and where does love come into the play? I mean, it can be so clinical when we say I needed to be this kind of a husband, this kind of a husband, this kind of husband. But what was it that you then said to yourself that as a husband, I need to meet XYZ parameters, but at the same time, what was your driving force in becoming that husband?
Thank you so much. Like what I said, I was inspired by quite a number of things, but what I needed to is to be a loving husband, and
Uh-huh.
I always wanted to challenge the status quo. You know,
Uh-huh.
Africans, sometimes we are wired in a certain way.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, our socialization process, and even as we were growing up, it was difficult to see my father kissing my mother, or to
Okay.
see a man kissing, his wife. It was rare. And myself, I told myself that I needed to change the status quo. I needed to become a better husband. So that's one thing that I said to myself. So I wanted to change the status quo. And one thing that also affects even us from a cultural point of view is to say, for example, issues around promiscuity, issues around cheating within our context is something that is very acceptable. But I said to myself, you cannot say you love somebody, but at the same time
Mm.
cheating that somebody. To me, it did not make sense. And I needed to change that status quo. And also, I used to challenge myself to say, you know what, in our African setup, it's acceptable, it's sometimes normalized in our society for a man to cheat his wife. But I said I wanted to do the extraordinary, to break that belief. So being ordinary in our setting is to do what other people are doing, doing the small houses, doing the girlfriends and all those things. But what I wanted was to become a different man. For me,
Uh-huh.
doing what everyone else is doing, I mean, not doing what everyone else is doing, to me, that's being extraordinary. So you need to challenge yourself to do things that perhaps many people are failing to do. So I always wanted to change the status quo. And the other thing that I also wanted to do was to ensure that right now I'm even challenging myself to say, until death do us apart, I'll never raise my hand to beat my wife. It's also
Mhm.
challenging the status quo because there are some beliefs, in our society, in our culture, that it's not normal for a marriage to get along without having violence and all those things. So I think my focus was on challenging the status quo to become a better husband who is not defined by social cultural views but defined by what is right.
Oh, that is really nice. That is really nice. So when you actually became a husband, when you finally got married, now you're 9 years in. How far are you in meeting those standards for yourself?
Yeah,
Do
that's a
you
different question. That's a
do you
difficult
do
question,
you
but I'm
still
trying
love
to
unconditionally?
answer. Yes, I should say I love unconditionally. I love my
Uh-huh.
wife, to be honest with you. Because one thing that I think the other thing that helped me was also to read.
Mm-hmm.
Reading, understanding one, the anatomy of the wife, understanding marriage itself, why we have marriage, why we get married, and all those things. Because so many times, what I noted is that so many as husbands, we are also caught unaware by some of the physical changes that do happen on a woman, for example, when they give birth and all those things.
Yeah.
There are quite a number of physical changes that do happen, and many men are then caught unaware, and in the process, that's where some challenges then start creeping in. So I myself, I actually tried to condition my mind to say whatever the changes, whatever physical changes that will happen to my wife, I always try to adjust to suit those. Regardless of
Mm-hmm.
the situation, I need to love my wife. So to me, if my wife is becoming, like, if there are some physical changes that are happening on her, to me, I say the beauty is increasing. So
Okay.
you know,
Well, Mrs.
so yeah,
Alois.
so yeah, so I would say she's actually being enhanced their beauty. So I believe beauty goes with, when a person gets, for example, if there are some physical changes happening, it means beauty is coming in another form. And you have to see it from that perspective. So that's what I normally do. And I believe we are I believe we are happy, and I believe my wife is happy. And I always try to prioritize her happiness.
Beautiful. That is really, 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 really interesting. I think you saw I lit up at some point. Yes.
Though, Jennifer, I would want to say that it's not as easy as I say it. Of course, challenges do sometimes emerge, and
Mm-hmm.
it's impossible for us to say we don't have conflicts, we don't have times when you quarrel. But it's also important to note that what you've done is also to learn how to fight positively. So yeah, challenges do come here and there, but it's also about trying to find a way of fighting positively in a manner that strengthens your relationship.
No, that's good to hear because the truth of the matter is, in as much as you're saying her beauty is being enhanced, there's also the challenge of personalities. We become different people, right? The person you got
Mm.
married to is not necessarily the person you are with today. How did you navigate those changes in yourself as a person and the changes that happened in her as a person, personality wise?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I always tell people that when you are dating during courtship, perhaps you just know about 5 or 10% about the person that you'll be dating, and 95% of the things you learn when you get married. So I think it's then important to understand what is important for me is commitment, because there are quite enough. Every one of us, my wife and myself, we do have our weaknesses. So the
Mm-hmm.
most important thing is then to understand, one, where do we complement each other? Two, you then need to learn to start your spouse so that you adjust to suit the character or the personality of my spouse. So in fact, especially the case with myself and my wife, myself, I'm more like a public figure. I talk a lot. My wife
Yeah.
doesn't like talking, and she's more of a reserved person. So already we have personality differences. But what's
Mhm.
important for me is then to find ways of complementing each other using those
Yeah.
differences and to start. That's why people say sometimes even conflicts in marriage can be useful. Sometimes when you have conflicts, when you have misunderstandings, you then get to understand what your spouse doesn't like, and we will not repeat that in future. So I believe it's about pursuing the other person
Yeah.
and trying to make sure that we live with our vows, that we do during the wedding.
That is awesome. We saw some comments that were coming in from our viewers. Someone is there's a husband there who's saying nice, and he's laughing. I think he's feeling challenged. Yes, thank you, Ignatius. And then we've got Clarence Masego who said, "Interesting, keep it up. Ideal husband." Unfortunately, they ran out of data, so we will catch them
Oh,
on the replay. And we've got Dr. Vida
yes.
Kaki. Hi, Doc Vida. She's saying hello. So thank you to everybody who's watching and seeing this discussion unfold. Now we're going to get into the part that I find super, super interesting, my passion, right? Let's talk about when you were now planning a family. Alois, are you still there?
Yes, I'm there, Janet.
Oh, lovely. Your your
I'm
your your
there.
thing has frozen, unfortunately. So I can't quite
Oh,
see. Yes, but I can hear you, which is good. So now we want to get into
okay.
when you decided to have a family, right? Um,
Mhm.
Tell us about how you experienced the whole process of bringing children in the world. How did you manage the pregnancy process? As you know, that pregnancy is a difficult place, right? And you have to have a very long suffering heart. So how did you cope with your wife's pregnancy? Alois, are you there? Hello?
Oh, our network get dropped.
Okay.
I don't know if it's mine or yours, but yeah, we had a
Okay.
technical hiccup. I think we are now back.
Okay, lovely. So I was asking, when you decided to bring children into the world, how did you navigate having a pregnant wife? You know, people say pregnant wives are difficult, right? And I just want to hear your perspective on how you navigated that space. And when we look at the ideal that you set yourself up for the ideal husband, did you meet those those parameters, those guidelines that you set for yourself, or things took a turn into a different direction?
Thanks, Janet. I would want to say, to me, marriage is more like a classroom. You
Uh-huh.
are always learning. When I started, I feel I was a bad husband, and I
Uh-huh.
bad in terms of perhaps I did not give my wife the support that she needed, especially during pregnancy, because I was
Okay.
always away, because of work. I was working for this, NGOs, and I was always traveling. So I felt like perhaps I was not very always available for my spouse. But I also tried very hard to offer psychological, physical, and moral support. But to be honest
Uh-huh.
with you, the thought of bringing children into the world is both exciting, but at the same time also emotionally draining, because you'll
Uh-huh.
be, yeah, because it's difficult. Anything can happen. There are
Mm-hmm.
issues around, miscarriages happening. There are issues around people dying during births. There a lot of things do happen, when we're expecting a child. So you're always nervous, not sure what will happen, when you're going to be delivered, when the wife is going to be delivering the child, and even during the pregnancy itself. So it's always a very difficult time. And I think every time especially when we were having our first born, each time when my wife, complained of a pain, I would make sure that we try to visit the hospital. But to be honest with you, like what you asked it to say, sometimes people say that pregnant wives are a bit difficult. I think I experienced that. I remember very well. My wife used to love Sprite, that soft drink called Sprite, and
Yeah.
she used to ask for Sprite even at midnight. To say I want Sprite. Sometimes you might need to have the Sprite in the fridge and all those things. So yeah, a lot of demands come through, but it's also a very exciting experience. And if that experience can be exciting, but if you are not also prepared and especially mentally for it, that can also result in some challenges, because you begin to think that the wife is being troublesome, is being nuisance, a nuisance, and all those things. So yeah, that process of bringing children into the world is not always easy. But when we had our next born, our second born and our third born, I think I would say, in terms of being a father, I was more supportive. I'd learned a lot from the first pregnancy, and yeah, I think I did support quite well.
Oh, lovely. So were you in the second pregnancy? Were you now those men who do the foot massages, the back rubs and
Okay.
all of that? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I was saying, was it when on the second pregnancy, were you what were the lessons that you then learned that you applied to being the supportive kind of husband that you were meant to be, or that you wanted to be?
Okay, I think at first, like what I said during our first pregnancy, it was difficult for me to distinguish between a person who is a pregnant woman who is genuine about the the demands that she was giving me during that time, and
Yes.
yeah. So it was difficult to distinguish between a genuine and perhaps somebody who is pretending maybe to seek attention. But when
Okay.
during our when we were expecting our second baby, I told myself that whatever she will ask, I'll do.
Ah, that's lovely. That's lovely.
Yes, I think we had quite a number of discussions with my wife, and she did convince me that, you know what, everything that I do during pregnancy, that's genuine. I will not be
Mhm.
pretending or anything else. So she managed to convince me that whatever happens during pregnancy is genuine. So when we were expecting our second born, I tried as much as possible to be there for her. Whatever she demanded, I also made sure that she gets. So yeah, I think it's about growing up and tolerating and understanding your spouse, because having a foreign, to me, it's having like the change of hormones, having more like a foreign object in the body, and all those things. I then understood my wife, and yeah, I think for a second and third born, I was more supportive. For our third born, I actually wanted to be there during the delivery process, but unfortunately, the boy was born during coronavirus, and I was not allowed.
Oh wow. So we've got people coming in with comments from the audience. Says, so refreshing to hear a man's perspective. Hello Edith, nice to have you on board. And then she's also said, thank you Alois for sharing your story. So I told you make some women very happy.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, she's waving. So the interesting thing is I actually did a small survey, right? At some point, wanting to understand. I did a survey to understand the maternity processes between women and men, right? I
Okay.
wanted to get a sense of how women felt about it, and the way men thought about it too. And the interesting thing is women wanted men to participate more in the process of them being pregnant. They wanted them to be more supportive. They needed them there. And the funny thing is the men were like, is there a place where we can send our wives so they can get everything they want? Which I thought was quite interesting. Liz Gwenzi here is saying that second and third attention is different, definitely from the first. Yes, I think for us it was quite inverted. My husband was a little more participatory in the first one, and by the time we got to the second one, he was like, well, the first one didn't break, so we can get through this,
Well, he
which
was
is
not used to it.
yes, yes, yes. And I was fortunate that he was able to be there in the operating in the labor ward, because my
Oh,
intention was, you need to see this process,
this one.
babes. You need to see how it
Mm,
happens, so you don't think I'm a human churning factory. Okay. So he
mm,
was there, and
mm.
I'm grateful for that, because after each delivery, he was like, I understand my wife differently now.
Yeah.
I appreciate her differently at this point. And
Mm,
that's exactly what you were saying as well. So
mm.
now, she's pregnant. You've been with her, you've supported her, you've learned lessons, and you've implemented in subsequent pregnancies. But there are now children in the home. Are you still the same husband you were in the beginning? Has anything changed? Because now you've got your attention being split in different ways and everything. How much of a husband, how much of the ideal husband are you now from when you started?
I think I think the challenge that I'm facing currently is around a very busy schedule, you know.
Yeah.
But what I've also tried to do is to make sure that I'm there for my children. I
Mm-hmm.
try as much as possible to create time. From my own personal perspective, I think I've become more of a better husband or a better
Okay.
father to my children. You know, as compared to what when I started during when we were having our firstborn, because I read a lot about child development,
Mm-hmm.
and one thing that I've developed interest in is to understand how I can bond with my kids, both boys and the girl. So so what I try to do is to ensure that one, I create time, especially during meals at evening, even when I'm
Mm-hmm.
busy, when I have a very busy schedule, I make sure that I sit down on the table and have supper with my kids. We talk, and even the younger one. The other thing that I also try to do is to make sure that I also participate actively in providing, child care work. So I participate actively, in changing diapers, feeding the children, because according to my understanding of child development, is how you shape your baby, is how you develop
Mm-hmm.
to come more closer with your baby. And the other thing, I am a father of two boys, and I also
Okay.
also want to be role model to them so that they
Mm-hmm.
grow up knowing that it's normal to cook, it's normal to do laundry, it's normal to change diapers. I want my kids to grow up knowing that it's normal to grow up in a family that is not marred with violence. So each time when perhaps I raise my voice, I feel like I'm being a very bad role model to my kids. So I would
Mm-hmm.
never want my kids to undergo any violence, environment. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think as I grow older, as I gain more experience, as I research more about marriage and child development, I feel I'm getting better as compared to when I started.
Oh, that sounds really good. So, hey, snaps for being that man who cooks and does laundry. Yes. I'm sure there are a lot of women who are out there green with envy for your wife. But I want to zone in now on, yes, these are all really great things and super proud
Mm,
of you.
mm,
I want to know how you stay connected. We said, what's love got to do with it, right? How
mm,
do we
mm.
stay connected with your wife? I mean, right now, I'm sure you're working from home, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So now you're in each other's faces all the time. They say distance makes the heart grow fonder, but here there's no distance whatsoever. So how do you keep the fire burning in your relationship?
A lot of things to help us to keep the fire burning.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, for me, the COVID-19 has been a blessing in disguise from
Oh,
a
really?
family, yeah, from a family and marriage point of view. One, I
Uh-huh.
managed to, my third born was born on the 2nd of December. And since then,
Mm-hmm.
I've been with him at home. So, yeah, I feel I've managed to have enough time with him. When he's
Congratulations.
crying, I can just, when I'm not busy, I can just jump in and, take him. But I coming to your question to say about with my wife, I was actually
Mm-hmm.
surprised that there was an increase in GBV during the first lockdown.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
I
it's been difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah, but my thinking was that was also an opportunity to strengthen the family, the marital bond, because we are
Mm-hmm.
together always. We get time to chat, we get time to talk together oftenly and to understand each other. So yeah, for me, it was a blessing in disguise because with my wife, whenever I need some help, perhaps something is stressing me, work-wise, I'll just say, you know what, honey, come here. I'm having this challenge. How do you think we can go about it? And
Uh-huh.
we agree. So to me, it's an opportunity to grow in love, and
Mm-hmm.
we have managed to. It's all about communicating, being there
Mm-hmm.
for each other every time, communicating, talking during lunch hour. You get time to talk, to sit down and talk. So yeah, I think that's how my marriage has grown. But what normally guides me myself is one. I research a lot about marriage. I research a lot about women. I always want to understand the psychology of a married woman. How
We
should
are so
I?
easy. We are so easy to please,
Ah, not that easy, unfortunately. So I always
Okay.
want to understand the psychology of women. I also
Mm-hmm.
always want to understand how I can maintain a very happy marriage. So in the
Mm-hmm.
process of trying to understand the psychology of women and trying to understand that this book that is called Men Are From Jupiter, Women Are From Mars, and all those other books about marriage. So in the
Yeah.
process, one thing that I've learned is that I cannot count myself successful if I just fail to be successful in my marriage. So what I
Mm-hmm.
try to do is to ensure that all the principles that I learn from different sources, even from the Bible itself, I
Mm-hmm.
apply in my marriage. Though it's not easy, Janet. It's not easy
Of
because
course.
what I also noted with marriage is that sometimes you can even struggle with just saying sorry when a conflict arises.
Yeah.
so, so you are constantly struggling with issues around selfishness, being
Mm-hmm.
self-centered, but you have to be very conscious about those things. It's
Mm-hmm.
about being conscious about things that can destroy marriage. So things like saying sorry, things like, for example, if you're having an argument, sometimes you also have to ask yourself whether is it important to be right or to be happy. And at the end of the day, you find out there are some arguments that end up ending like fights, but they could be just be resolved by somebody just giving in because they may not change anything. So I think it's
Yeah.
about understanding your limitations, understanding your boundaries, and constantly dealing with this aspect of selfishness, being
Mm-hmm.
a self-centered person, because that's what kills so many marriages. A person is failing to just say ask for forgiveness, but a person is failing to sincerely apologize. You see a person apologizing, but at the same time say, but you also did this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. I
so
have
yeah,
a
that's
saying.
mm,
Pick your battles, not
mm,
everything is worth your time. So I agree with you 100%.
mm.
Our viewers, Edith says, Janet, you're so hilarious. I think I said something silly at some point. And then we've got our brother Tamsan Tabani, who's saying very few men do that. This is when you were talking about laundry and dishes and helping with home care and the like. And at the same time, that's when Edith even commented to say, well done to you for
Thank
taking the
you.
time, to strengthen your relationship during this difficult time, if anything.
Mm,
So you said you grew up and public display of affection was not done.
mhm.
Kissing was not done, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
how do you do that differently? I can imagine, like right now, because you're saying, that was different from me personally. When my kids are like, "Ew, mom and dad," I am all over my husband's face kissing that man. So how do you do it at your house?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Yeah, we have tried to also publicly display our love and our affection,
Mm-hmm.
especially to our children. Like what I
Mm-hmm.
said, we are being role models to our
Yeah.
children. I am a father of two boys. We have also a girl. So I want my girl to understand a model husband. I also
Mm-hmm.
want my boys to understand a model a wife and a model a father. So what do we
Mm-hmm.
normally do? Yeah, occasionally we kiss in their presence, and they love it. Sometimes they even remind us. Yeah, sometimes they even remind us to say, Daddy, it has been a while since you kissed mom. Can you do it today? So yeah,
Oh, that's good.
so yeah, we try as much as possible to help understand because the worldview of marriage, Janet,
Mm-hmm.
is about an institution that is so hard. You need to
Mm-hmm.
shingirira
Yeah,
and all things. It's an
I know.
institution that is viewed as something that's so hard, something terrible, something painful. But what we need to do is then to change the narrative so that when even our kids are growing, they need to know that you can enjoy. So we need to publicly display. And that's what we've managed to do with my wife to make sure that each time our kids see us happy, each time we also try to display to them what it means to be married happily.
So love's got everything to do with it then, right?
Yes, Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's cool. Now, because of all the experiences that you've had, all the learning that you've been doing, and everything that you've been amassing over this topic of being a husband, right? Today we're
Yes.
focusing on you being a husband, not so much being the father, but the husband.
Husband.
What
Yes.
do you know now that you wish you knew before that you can then tell to other men? Kuti, "Oko, hakunaumira mushe." You know, you need to pay attention to things like this. You know, what lessons, what nuggets will you give other men?
I think as a husband, what I would encourage other men is firstly we need to be supportive husbands. I like what I said. I was not a very good husband, should I say, especially during the first years of our marriage. The first year, 1 year, 2 years, I was not a very good husband. I used to be a soccer fan, and I would go to to watch soccer matches and leave my wife behind. I felt I wasted time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I wasted time that I was supposed to spend with my wife because yeah, she actually opened up to me later to say, you know what, I marriage was a bit difficult for me during that from that time when I was always busy going to spend time with my brother, going to spend time with other people in the stadium and all those things. So to other upcoming husbands or to other men, I think the most important thing is create time, quality time for your spouse. Spend time with your spouse, get to understand each other, especially during pregnancy, especially the first pregnancy. I think it's always important for the men to be always there. I even missed the opportunity to witness my wife delivering a baby. I think to me that's the opportunity that I mean. There was no corona, we didn't have lockdown, and I feel like sometimes I also prioritize work more than my wife, specifically because I used to travel a lot, sometimes spend 2 weeks in the field and do all those things, which I think I should have balanced much, much better to be with my wife and my kids as well. Because that bond between the father and the kids is also very, very critical. And I feel for my firstborn, I did not do enough to create that bond, though through the lesson that I'm learning, we are trying by all means to then, strengthen the bond. So yeah, it's important for men to be there for for their wives. These things like soccer, these things like all these other things that happens within the world, they will never come to an end. But family is the most important, and they will never. It's difficult to get to a point where you say, you know what, I finished leisure. I finished, watching soccer. We are done with it. But your family always need attention. So yeah, I think that's what I learned. Create time, seek to understand your spouse, and do what you can to support them. Child care work is something that I also noted I did not support my wife with, because I'm realizing now that it's something that's very difficult. Doing laundry, washing clothes, and all those things. Those things are very, very difficult. And I think I did not do quite well, especially during the first stages of our marriage. But with the lesson that I'm getting now, I'm also, improving on those aspects.
Yeah, we've got someone from our viewers saying pride must fall. So I guess it's speaking to what you were saying at that time. And then our
Mm.
brother, Tamani also said, true kids have to learn from their parents. Well done, my bro. You are
Thank
motivating and
you.
inspiring others, Mr. Nyamazana. So well done to
Thank
you. Now, what is your view on love languages? Do you feel there's a universal way of loving, or there is a peculiar way of loving for each different individual? What do you feel?
I don't think there's an universal way of loving.
Okay.
Love languages do differ because
Mhm.
people do have different interests, but there are basics, Janet. There are some basics.
Okay. Woman.
Yeah, there are some basics that are very universal. For example, constantly assuring your spouse that you love them. To
Mm.
me, that's a basic thing. Buying your wife some gifts, to me, that's a basic thing. But you also see that when it comes to buying wives and surprises, it's also about the taste. What do they want? They need to understand,
Mm.
because somebody might prefer, to say he or she wants clothes. Some might say, you know what, I don't want clothes, but someone jewelry and all those things. So I think it differs. You need to understand your spouse because they do differ. And to some, getting some gifts is not as important as getting attention. You know,
Mm-hmm.
some
Mm-hmm.
prefer attention more than getting gifts. So you might end up, and even, some actually prefer just going out and, at the expense of perhaps giving. So there, people tend to generalize this whole aspect of marriage to say, what, you need to buy your spouse some surprise. That's fine and that's good. But you also need to understand, to unpack further, what do my spouse want? So that's what I
Mm-hmm.
normally try to understand. So there's no universal love language, but there are some basics. So that there are some principles, but you then need to further unpack to suit your spouse. And people coming from different backgrounds. Some come from very affluent backgrounds. Some come from poor backgrounds. Some come from middle income background. So you see that those people, they are even they are what they expect from their spouses can be different as well. Because for somebody who's coming from perhaps a very poor background and expect maybe to, should I say, to make up for perhaps the deprivation that happened in the past, and you try as much as possible to buy some good things. You try as much as possible to show them that you love them, maybe taking them to resort areas, and although that can be something that they might appreciate more than a person who grew up, visiting Victoria Falls frequently. you
Mm.
know, they
Yeah.
might be,
Yeah.
so they might be expecting a complete. So somebody might have grown up, being in a very affluent family, but without getting adequate attention from perhaps parents or significant others. So that person, you see that he or she might require more of attention than maybe material things, or maybe so it differs. But there are
Yeah.
principles, I say, to say, assuring your wife constantly, like even complimenting, to say, even commenting on their dress, commenting on their profile, on the way they look, and all those things. I think, to me, those are basic things that should be
No.
done. But you also need to further unpack and understand your spouse.
No, I definitely agree. So, like you said, marriage is a constant classroom, isn't it? So
Mm.
it's up to us to be constantly learning our spouses. As husbands are learning their wives, wives are also learning their husbands, so we can understand each other better. So I really have enjoyed this conversation, and I think in closing, probably you can just tell us a little more about your organization, because Alois is the founder of Fathers Against Abuse, right? So please tell us a little bit more, and this will probably give people a lot of context as to why you are the man that you are, right? Yes. So please tell us, and viewers, if you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat box, and we will talk about them. And yeah, Alois, it's up to you.
Oh, thanks so much, Janet. So yeah, Fathers Against Abuse is a non-profit organization that I founded with other colleagues, like-minded colleagues. The main objective of this organization is to, one, foster what you call positive masculinity. Like what I said in the beginning, when I look at men, I feel that they're also sometimes victims of patriarchy, and we need to change the narrative. So what we want is to foster positive masculinity. So many times, especially with the marriage context, Jenny, sometimes you get into the marriage expecting to be little gods, expecting the wife to expecting the wife for example, to always kneel down, do all those sorts of things, which I think sometimes they are shaped by society. Well, that's fine. There's nothing bad about being respectful, but there's everything bad if the husband starts to be treated like a god in courts. So what we are trying to achieve with Fathers Against Abuse is to raise a generation of men and boys that shun abuse, that shun violence, that shun gender-based violence. So we are trying to foster positive masculinities, to role model fathers to become responsible fathers, and the boys to become responsible, because we also understand that at some point boys will become fathers. So we also need to prepare them to become responsible fathers. So the other thing that we do is also to raise awareness around
Mhm.
gender-based violence, particularly targeting men. Because the other thing that you noted, myself being a gender, specialist, I've been doing some studies, and evaluations of some of the projects that are implemented by women rights organizations. They've been doing quite excellent work. But what I also noted is that the voices of men were missing. And in the end, these issues around gender-based violence, they are then treated like men's issues. For example, if men see an NGO coming talking about women issues, they say, "I know they've started those women issues. We don't want to hear more about them." But little did they know, or did they know that gender-based violence affects everyone. It affects our health system. It affects the development of our nation. It affects families and all those things. So I want to bridge that gap, to engage men, to come into conversations, to talk about gender-based violence, to foster positive masculinity, and to change attitudes. Because the violence that also happens within family is about expectations, where we have dealt with cases where the father might actually beat uh, his wife because maybe he did not prepare food on time. But the wife was, let's look at the COVID-19 context, for example. There was increase in the burden of care work for women because one, the kids are there, everyone is at home. The kids are at home, the husband is at home, perhaps the relatives are at home. So they need to cook, they need to clean the house, they need to do laundry, they need to wash, a lot of all those things. And the husband then says, "You are taking time, or you are giving me food late." Yet the wife is very busy. So what you are saying is, what if husbands were then able to chip in to say, "You know what, let's share responsibilities, let's all work on these things." There was not going to be violence. So we need to change the narrative. So as Fathers Against Abuse, we are just there to change the narrative. We are there to talk to men, to say there's nothing normal about violence. And we also want to create a platform for men to come through, to seek help when they are facing challenges. Our theory of change, we believe that sometimes when men can also be victims of abuse,
Yeah.
but there is special emotional abuse. For example, when bad words are said against them or all those things, men then end up like retaliating using force or or like physical violence. So what we
Yeah.
are trying to do is to create platforms for men to say, when you are having challenges or differences with your spouse, come through to us. We talk to you and we help you regarding how you can then address those challenges without turning to be violent, especially physical violence. So yeah, we create platforms for men to also seek help, to seek counseling, to disclose their issues if they are facing some challenges. So that's basically who we are as Fathers Against Abuse.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That was that's a lot of information that you've given us there. And we've got Taffy S saying hi, and she also said she agrees. She says it's true what you were talking about in relation to the societal norms that have been that have shaped the way people perceive themselves. And her comment is, "You're really doing the Lord's work." Thank you.
Thank
So
you. Thank
amen to
you.
that. Now, just
Thank
as we
you.
wrap up, where can people find you? I mean, in case there's anybody who's watching and they need to seek your services or find support, where can we find you on the different spaces that you're on?
Thanks so much, Janet. We are on Facebook, Fathers Against Abuse. We are on Facebook. We are also on Twitter. It's Fazim, Fathers Against Abuse. And they can also even reach out to my cell number with 0772 So we are very much ready to engage, even with churches, with companies, because what you want is to change the narrative around gender-based violence. And we've also noted that even the church is not a safe haven for survivors of gender-based violence. A lot of GBV happens even to congregants, but the church has not been forthcoming in terms of addressing gender-based violence at church level. So yeah, we engage churches. We do quite a number of awareness raising within churches. So yeah, they can actually engage with us. We can partner and see how it goes.
Wonderful stuff. So there is his email address, and he mentioned the different handles that they're on. They're on Facebook. It's Fathers Against Abuse. Sorry, I'm typing this as I'm talking. So
Oh,
just so
no,
people
okay.
so people
Let us
can see this. So Fathers Against Abuse, guys, go out there, like their page, refer people if you know anyone who's having any struggles. Go out there and share widely. So thank you so much, Alois, for this amazing conversation. I enjoyed it a lot. I learned a lot, and I was able to also think, oh yeah. By the way, y'all, I have an awesome husband. Okay.
wonderful.
So
Wonderful.
yes, we are happy for your wife because she's got a man who's woke, who's doing the most and trying his best. So until next time, we'll definitely have you back on here again. And congratulations for being the first man, to talk about being a husband on Mwanangu here. So awesome. Thank you. Take care and
Thanks so
goodbye.
much, Annette. Thanks so much for
Thank you
inviting
for
me.
everyone who was here. Yes.
I also
Thank you,
enjoyed the
Alice.
show. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Oh wait, there's a comment. Yes. Yep. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.